Okay, class. What I want to do here is create a web service based on the code that I've previously written. And thus, I need to understand the code that I have. So in my case, my example is a support plan class. And what this support plan class does is manage the entire support class portion. Support plan, where I can add support plans, view support plans, etc. Same as we've seen in previous classes. I can even take a look at the database. And basically what I want to do is expose the ability to view and to add new data to this database here, but using a web service so that the actual database is not exposed. So here's what I want to do. Let me go ahead and close these items. What I want to do is, again, expose some of these methods, but make this private so that nobody else can touch it. I'm going to right click and I'm going to add a new item. And this new item is going to be this, a web service. And so let's call this support plan service. Okay. And when I do this, this file is added, supportplanservice.asmx, which is the web service, and this is automatically created. As you can see, a web service looks exactly like a class. We have the public class declaration, and we even have an exposed web method. What web method here means is that this is accessible via the internet, meaning public. Okay, what I can do is even create like a constructor. So I can do something like this, which is creating an instance of my support plan class for use internally in the web service. So let's do this. There I am, and I can even create a constructor. And the only thing I want the constructor to do is just initialize. And there I go. Nothing different than what we've been accustomed to seeing. But now, the idea is to create a couple of methods that will expose certain functions of the support plan class, but through web services. So I'm going to, instead of overwriting this, I'm just going to leave it. I'm going to add a new web method, and I do this by simply typing web method as you see here on the screen. And I'm going to say, let's say, public string get plan description. And what this will do is it'll return the description based on a passed ID. So I'm going to pass it a plan ID. And what it's going to do is, okay, well, I'm going to look for plans based on the ID, and this is just a method that's within my support plans class. And there it is, find support by ID. And I'm going to provide it the ID that was passed. So if this is false, it means it did not find it. So I'm just going to return null. Else, it means it did find it, so I'm going to return the actual string. And there it is. And so what that'll do is, it'll be a publicly available web service that has an ID passed to it, finds the ID, and returns the plan associated to that ID. Now I can also do something like adding a new support plan based on information that was passed. And so I can create another web method and call it public bool add new plan, and let's provide two parameters, the plan name and the plan description, which are just two elements that I need in order to add a plan in my case. Okay, and so what I want to do is create a new instance of this plan and then provide it the information. So description equals plan description and plans.support name equals equals plan name, which are the two elements that are added. Because this has an identity field, meaning it's an auto incrementer that I don't have to pass, it'll automatically be set, and then I can say if plans.add. If this is true, it means that there were no errors returned, so I can return true. Else, return false. And there I am. So now I have the two methods based on this web service. Now what I can do is also run this web service to test out and make sure that everything is working properly before I write the code that consumes the web service. So I'm going to go ahead and run this by hitting F5, and I can see the three methods, web methods, that are exposed. The hello world is just, it just says hello world, nothing different. That's the one that's automatically created by the code. However, I can click on get plan description, and it's asking for that plan ID, for that parameter that I created. I know I have one with a plan ID of 3, so I can just pass it a 3 and click on invoke, and there it is, 555. That's the description that was associated to that plan ID. And I can also add a new one. And invoke that. And that'll return true because it was added. Now if you want to see where this was actually added, we can go and open up the database again. Show table data. And as you can see, there's the data that was passed right there. And there's the support plan. I passed it a 3, and there's a description that was associated to it. So it is in fact working. This did in fact work. What I can do now is add a new web page that's going to end up consuming that service. However, before I can do that, I have to create a reference to the service that I just developed. So I'm going to click on Add Service Reference, and this right here is going to ask me for the address of the web service. This would be an address if it's a public service that's available online. For example, I added a few public services that are on a directory. And so for all of these, for example, here are examples of web services that are exposed. However, since I want something that's local, I can just click on Discover, and it'll search for the local services that are created. So in my case, it's this one, and I can name it anything I want. In my case, I'll just go ahead and call it Support Plan Service Reference. And OK. And so now I can add. Now I can go ahead and work with this. So I can add a page, and I'm simply going to right click and add a new item, and it's just going to be a normal page using master pages. And let's call this consume service.aspx, and I'll use my site.master. I can go ahead now excuse me, and open the page, and let's go to the code behind it. And now what I can do is create code that will consume the service. Alright, so before that, let's add a new label, and let's call this one plan description. Let's fix this a little bit. Just adding a paragraph before or after, so I can, there we go, so it can be nicer. Alright. So let's add a label and a text box and a button. And this is going to do something very specific. All it's going to do is it's going to get a description based on whatever text is passed here, which will be the ID. So that's the one that we're going to invoke. Plan ID. So this will be plan ID. And this button will simply be btn get description. And let's label this get description. And so let's go ahead and run this. Oh wait, before running it, we actually need to create a label so that we can retrieve the information that was passed. We'll call this temp label just so it's visible on the bottom. And we'll call this LBL results. Okay, so now we can invoke the code so that we can test it. So to invoke the code, what we're going to do is create an instance of that web service. And simply now invoke whatever it is that we want to do. So it was LBL result.text equals service dot get plan description, and it's going to be based on, since it's long, I need to parse it, so I want to do long.parse and then txt plan ID, which is the GUI portion of it. And so what that'll do is it'll invoke this method, passing it whatever it is that I passed on this, and present the results to this text box. So now we can go ahead. And so we'll just hit F5 and now pass it, let's say that 3 that I had before, so this should be 555, and there it is. So what it did is it actually invoked, and now I have that description right here. Okay, and we can add another one just to test out. So let's say here we want a new paragraph, and this time, actually, let's reuse some of the code. Let's just put add plan here. And what I want to do is add a plan where whatever I enter here will be both the description and the plan name, just so that I can reuse it. So we'll call this admin, and this will be btn admin. Okay, and so when we invoke this, we would do the same thing. Support plan service equals new support plan service. And then I can do service.add. And again, I'm going to pass it whatever it is that was on there for both user and for the both plan name and plan description. And now I can go ahead and run it. So let's make sure it's something that I remember. So it's all A's and then admin. Alright. So when I clicked here, it went ahead and added all this. So I should be able to look at the database for this. So let's go ahead and look at the database. And there it is. Now again, this is a very simple example. Obviously, I didn't do the best job possible in the GUI and all this stuff. Obviously, it would have been better if I would have created a plan name text box and a description text box and so forth. But it was just to give you an idea of what you can do. Now, since I'm using this internally, internal meaning it's in the same project, that's the reason I can invoke this. Otherwise, I would have had to invoke the service, which is this one, the support plan service reference. But again, for the purposes of this class, you can invoke the class itself because you're using the service internally, which is fine. Well, hopefully this video helped clarify a little bit more on the aspects of web services. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and email me or text me. Have a great day.